Welcome to the K20 Center's Zoom Into Your Career video series. These online career expos give students a way to explore many interesting careers and learn about their career options from volunteer professionals. Scott Salesky is an assistant professor at the University of Oklahoma, working at the National Weather Center. He is a Ph.D. in meteorology. Scott teaches classes and does research for the university, such as looking at turbulence in the atmosphere.
So right now I'm sitting here in my office in the National Weather Center in Norman. So you might say, well, what does a professor do? Really, I'm a scientist and I'm in the School of Meteorology. So some of you might think, well, I see the meteorologist on the news. Do you forecast the weather? No, not really. Do you chase tornadoes? No, I don't do that either. If I saw a tornado, I would probably run away. But I do study the atmosphere, and I'm interested in what happens in the lowest mile of Earth's atmosphere, and I try to understand it through observations of different field experiments that we go out and we collect data from different instruments. I do some big computer simulations on big supercomputers, and then really a variety of things. So I'm interested in transport in the lower atmosphere, trying to understand things like how does air quality change in a city, and how does the atmosphere transport different pollutants throughout an urban area, is just one example. So my job as a professor is kind of split pretty evenly between teaching and doing research. And my teaching load is pretty light compared to your teachers who are in your classroom and they teach every day, all day. I only teach 3 classes a week, but I teach college classes, working with undergraduate students who are working on a bachelor's degree. And then we also have graduate students who are working on a master's degree or a Ph.D. And it's really fun. It's pretty focused classes just in meteorology and trying to understand the atmosphere and how it works. So that's about half my time. And the rest of my time I do research, which involves a few different things. So I do some research myself. I analyze data from different field experiments, from big computer simulations, and I study it to try to answer different science questions. So if you think about the problem solving you might do in a math class, and if you like problem solving, you can usually solve a math problem pretty quick, right? So maybe 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes if it's really tough. The problems that I work on are a lot bigger scale. So there are things that I look at data and it might take me a couple of months, 2, 3, 4 months to really get a good answer. And then once I do that, my job is to communicate those findings with other scientists and other people interested in similar things to me. So I write it up, I write journal articles, submit it to a journal, and eventually it gets published. So I do some of my own research. I also work with graduate students who are come to OU to get a master's degree or a PhD. So they say, well, I went to college, but I still want to do some more learning and I'm not done yet. So I'm going to stay in school even longer. So they do research projects and I work with them and advise them. And then part of my job too is getting money to support science. So the US government puts some money aside through the National Science Foundation and other places where I can say, hey, I have this really good idea. There's this important question that nobody knows the answer to and somebody should solve. I can write a proposal and say, this is the problem I'm interested in solving, and ask them for money. It gets reviewed by others. And if I'm successful, they'll say, okay, here's some money to support a student or a field campaign. so you can go out and study this question. So you might wonder, well, if this is something I'm interested in, what do I have to do to have this sort of career? So on a daily basis, I use a lot of math. And if you're interested in, studying the atmosphere or studying physics or chemistry or the environment or anything like that, math skills are really important. So you start off in middle school taking math classes there. When you get to high school, you'll have to take algebra classes, maybe trigonometry. And then in college, you'll take classes like calculus and differential equations. So there's really a lot of math building upon the things that you're learning right now. Another thing that's really important is communication skills. So I'm in front of a classroom a lot. I'm talking to students, teaching classes. So I do a lot of verbal communication, talking to people. I also do a lot of written communication, writing proposals, writing papers. So writing skills and communication skills are very, very important. And then another thing that I do pretty regularly is computer programming. So I get these huge data sets, and there's so much data, I can't just put it into an Excel spreadsheet or something like that. There's just too much data. So I actually have to write some computer code to go through, read in all the data, analyze it, and calculate statistics. So that's another important skill. As far as a career, it's something I really enjoy. So I like teaching, I like working with students, and I think it's a really cool opportunity getting to do science and saying, hey, this is an important question, and if somebody solved it, it potentially could make, my life better, other people's life better, right? So if you think about urban air quality, right, pollution in cities, if we can understand this better, we might be able to say, well, let's do something about emissions for cars, or plan how we set up the buildings in a city so we don't have so much pollution trapped in the area. So I'd like to think that what I do is important, and I also just really enjoy problem solving. So when I was your age in middle school and going into high school, I enjoyed math classes. I really liked solving math problems. And I get to do this every day, except at kind of a bigger scale. So yeah, I think it's a really fun and rewarding career. And the nice thing is that I kind of get to be my own boss too. I can really say, okay, this is something that I find interesting, that I want to study, and I'm free to do it. So there's a lot of freedom and a lot of flexibility in what I do. Now, I did go to school for a long time to get this job. So I went through middle school and high school. I graduated high school. Then I went to college. I got a bachelor's degree. But after that, I wasn't done. I said, well, I enjoy school. I enjoy learning. So I'm going to stay in school a little bit longer. So I spent another 2 years getting a master's degree and taking some classes, but part of my degree was actually doing research. So I solved a problem, and then I had to write all my results up in a book. So this is my master's thesis. It's about 80 pages long, writing up what I found. And at the end, you have to give a presentation to your professors and your classmates, and they can ask you all sorts of questions and say, well, is this really right, or are you forgetting anything? And then after a master's degree, I got a doctorate degree, which took another 4 years, and I had to write a dissertation. So this is a pretty hefty book I had to write at the end. It's a little bit different than just doing work in your classes. But if you like learning and you like science and learning about the world around you, it's really a cool career to be in. So I think at this point, I'll wrap up what I'm talking about, and I'd be happy to take any questions from you guys.
Awesome. Thank you, Scott. At this time, schools, if you have students who have questions, you have two options. You can type the question in the chat box and we will read them in order, or you can just type your school name. So for example, you could say, has a question, and then I will go to you. You can unmute yourself on your end, and we can let a student ask the question to Scott directly. So either option, you can type your question in the chat box, you can ask Scott the question directly. Just need to let us know and we will have you unmuted. All right, does anybody have questions for Scott?
Hey, Jamie.
Yes.
We have a question, but I didn't have it hooked to the computer because I'm in another teacher's classroom.
That is okay. Is this?
This is one of.
Cool. Hi. Go ahead and ask Scott your question.
Speak loudly.
How long do you have to go to school for the job that you do? Meteorologist. How long do you have to go to school to be a meteorologist?
Oh,
Did you
that's
hear?
you want to know how long you have to go to school to be a meteorologist, yes? Yeah, so we have graduates who get jobs working in meteorology, who get a job right out of doing an undergraduate degree in college. So most of them go to school for 4 years of college. But if somebody's interested in research and doing a graduate degree after that, then it's another 2 years for a master's degree, or usually like 4 or 5 for a Ph.D. So after you graduate from high school, it's anywhere between 4 years and up to another 10 years.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, we're going to go to has a question. Go ahead and unmute. You guys have the floor.
Okay, so Scott, what made you want to become a professor and like not work at a news station, like as a meteorologist?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'm really interested in doing the science and solving scientific problems, just I guess because I'm really curious about the world around me. So sometimes I just see things and I wonder, why does that work, right? Why do I see things that I see in nature or the environment? You know, if we see certain kinds of clouds, why do they look that way? So that's what really got me interested in science, is just learning more about the world around me and problem solving. I would say that meteorologists who work for TV stations, it's a little bit more like broadcasting and communications and sharing information with people about the weather. So they're both paths that you can follow with a degree in meteorology, but there's very, very different things that you can do. We even have graduates from OU who go and work at different private sector companies. So some of them might work for UPS, and they'd say, well, you know, if you're shipping packages around the country, what's the weather going to be? So you know that you're not driving through the middle of a snowstorm or something like that. So there's really a lot of careers that someone can have with a degree in meteorology.
All right, let's go to the next question. How much data do you have to collect for one single forecast? And that's from.
Oh, that's a good question. So for forecasting, people use a lot of data from all around the country. So at a lot of places throughout the US, and here in Norman is one of them, there's National Weather Service forecast offices. So you have meteorologists who forecast the weather, and they release weather balloons a couple of times a day that measure temperature and pressure and humidity in the atmosphere, and they go up higher and higher and higher. And that data is used for the big computer models that we use to forecast the weather. So there's a huge amount of data from weather balloons. There's, if you guys have ever heard of the Oklahoma Mesonet, there's data from that people use. There's satellite data and really a variety of things.
Thank you. Next question, what is atmosphere turbulence and do you study it?
Oh, good question. So that atmospheric turbulence is the emphasis of my research. For those of you who might have been on a plane before, maybe if you've flown, you hit some really rough patches of air, right? The plane shakes around and you're moving all over the place, and that's from turbulence, just the air swirling around in all these little turbulent eddies. So this is a branch of physics, which is fluid mechanics, so studying fluids and understanding how they move under different conditions. So to understand like how a pollutant spreads in a city, you have to understand the motion of the winds, right? And the winds on very, very small scale. So maybe if you've been outside on a fall day, once the leaves start falling, they're all swirling around in the wind. That's due to turbulence. And there's a lot of math and a lot of physics that goes into understanding it.
Excellent. We have a question just regarding it was just a really important question. What is like the average salary range for someone in your field?
That's a really good question. So it kind of depends on the level of education that somebody has. If you have a bachelor's degree, you start out at one point. If you have a master's or a Ph.D., you make more. So in general, if you go to school longer and you've gotten more education, your salary tends to be higher. For somebody working in research fields, depending on the exact position, some of the salaries might start off at maybe $60,000 a year. But those go up with more education and experience. So some professors might make, more on the order of $100,000, $150,000 a year. So there's really a wide range depending on education and how long they've been doing it too.
Thank you. And we have a couple of more questions. It looks like from we're going to go back to allow them to ask their question.
What was your original career choice going into college?
So that is a great question. So when I went into college, I wasn't planning to be a scientist. I actually went to college to be a high school teacher. So I got a bachelor's degree in science education. I said I want to be maybe a high school science teacher, and I took some classes in college. I took a meteorology class from this really, really cool professor who was a scientist before he started teaching at the college level. And he spent 6 months wintering over in Antarctica and studying the meteorology and the winds there in the Antarctic. And he had all these really, really cool stories. And I thought, wow, that's really cool. And I wanted to teach, but I also wanted to have the chance to do research as well. So I decided to go to graduate school, and as a college professor, it's really cool because I get the chance to do both. I still get to do some teaching, but I also get to do the science.
Excellent. I see you have one more question that you wanted to ask.
What made you decide to go to OU?
Well, OU offered me a job. So that was a pretty good reason. But I mean, really, OU is very well known for their meteorology program. if you would look at similar departments at colleges and universities across the US, it's probably in the top 10 to the top 5 if someone wants to go to college to study meteorology. So it's a really good department. It's really a good place to be.
Great. And I think we have time for one more question. It's coming from, it's asking you, do you get an adrenaline rush when all the warnings and storm watches pop? Like, does it excite you?
I get an adrenaline rush, but more like, oh, maybe I need to run to a storm shelter now.